Hello and welcome back to Guided Souls. I'm your host, Katie. You may also know me as Guided Soul Katie on TikTok, and I'm so excited to be back here for another week with you guys. I'm just getting over a cold, so I apologize if I sound a little bit raspy or nasally today. Hopefully, that's not the case, at least too much. But if I sound a little different, that is why. And before I jump into today's episode, I wanted to let you guys know that I had the privilege of being a guest on another podcast this week. So the podcast is called Awaken Your Inner Awesomeness with Melissa Oatman. You can find it anywhere you listen to podcasts, and it's another spirituality podcast. I had such a great time talking about being a medium, connecting with spirit, and honestly, just the crazy experience that being a human is, which is, one of my favorite topics. So you can go check that out. It's her most recent episode. I think it's called Connecting with Spirit with Katie. And if you like this podcast, I know you're going to like her podcast too. So definitely make sure to add that to your queue. And I love being on podcasts. I love talking on this podcast. It's definitely a passion of mine and something that I want to see continue to grow. So if you happen to have a podcast and you want me to come on as a guest, obviously I would want to make sure that we're like aligned and it's a good fit, but you're welcome to send me an email at guidedsoullllc@gmail.com and just let me know what your podcast is and we can see if it's a good fit. I do not care at all if you have a following or if you're just starting out. Does not matter to me. I just love chatting with people about spirituality and it really fills my cup. And if you listen to other spiritual podcasts and you're like, hey, I think Katie would make a good guest on this podcast, let that guest know. And then I truly am trying to grow this podcast, which is it's a tough thing to do. If you enjoy this podcast, the number one way that you could help me out today is if you enjoy this episode, you can send it to someone or a different episode and just let them know, hey, I'm listening to this. I really enjoyed this. I thought you might like this. Just one episode. That way, maybe I can have a new person listening to the podcast. So that would mean so much to me. And today's topic that we're going to be talking about is co-creating with the universe. And this is a really big topic. It's a really important topic. It's probably one that I'll talk about again in the future because, as always, I definitely don't have it all figured out, but it's something that has been a really big part of my life recently that I've been really trying to discover the art of co-creating with the universe. It's not easy. So I just kind of wanted to talk about that process and how that's manifesting in my life currently and some things that I've learned along the way that may help you out as well. So to start off, I think the best way to kind of explain how I see co-creating with the universe is to talk about a reading that I gave actually for my TikTok collective this past weekend. And it was all about having this paradigm shift. And the metaphor that was coming to me, the imagery that I was seeing was someone holding onto a rope and climbing up the side of a cliff. So think of just like a straight down cliff, and you have a rope and you've got both of your feet pressed up against the cliff and you're, pulling with all your might to get up the cliff. You're pulling on the rope and you're getting really far and you're getting close to the top. You're like just a couple feet away from the top, but for some reason you can't seem to close that gap of those last couple feet. And you're straining and you're trying to figure it out and it's just not working. And then all of a sudden, you think to yourself, why am I trying to get up this cliff? Whose idea was this? Is this even what I want? Will I like the view when I get there? Will I like the people that are waiting for me when I get there? Like just really looking inside yourself and being like, why am I doing this? And then realizing that you can just let go of the rope. And so you let go and you're free falling through the air and it feels incredible, but also very scary and exhilarating, and you're not sure what's going to happen. And the most beautiful part is you aren't sure what's going to happen. And some of the, imagery that came to me as I was channeling this was, you don't know if you're going to land on a dragon and it's going to take you to some faraway magical place. You don't know if you're going to get your own wings and suddenly be able to fly. You don't know if you're going to land in the ocean and become a mermaid. All of these beautiful possibilities, and you don't know which one is going to be for you. But what you do know is that no matter what happens, it is far cooler and more interesting and more exciting than just getting to a top of a cliff. And to me, that really is like a total paradigm shift. And I know that people talk about timeline jumps and getting to a different timeline. And so it's kind of like that, but one where your entire past timeline just blows up because you realize like you were looking at it from a totally not authentic perspective, and you thought you were looking at it from, this is what I want, I'm following my soul, I'm following my heart, but it's almost like this bubble that just pops, and then you realize, oh my gosh, I can do things so much differently. And so to me, that's a lot of what co-creating with the universe means. It's letting go of the rope, allowing yourself to free fall, but also doing the work as you're free falling to make sure that you don't get frightened and grab onto the rope. It's facing those fears so that you can continue to free fall as you wait for, whatever blessing is waiting for you, and really taking steps towards whatever it is that is driving you and exciting you. So it's not just letting go of the rope, it's doing the work while you're free falling through the air and making sure that you don't grab back onto the rope out of fear. But it is very much surrendering to the process and allowing the universe to surprise you. And I struggle with this so much. I just want to know what is coming for me. But when we don't know, when we allow the universe to surprise us, it can be something so beautiful as thinking your dream is just going to be getting to the top of a cliff, not realizing that you could literally be a mermaid. I think that's the difference that I see here is, you think that your dream is to just stand on this cliff and have this beautiful view, not realizing that you could be a mermaid. And so for the past few months, this has definitely been a theme that has been playing itself out in my life. And I think I just didn't really realize what was happening, but I channeled a different message a few months ago on December 3rd, to be exact, about my spirit team saying, give it 3 months, allow us 3 months to get things into place and your manifestation will come to fruition. As I mentioned before, like December, January were really, really tough. A lot of death and rebirth cycles, a lot of feeling lost, feeling like I'm not sure where I'm going. Just kept on replaying in my head, like just get to March 3rd, just wait till March 3rd and everything will become easier, more clear, you'll know where you're going. And at the beginning of February, I still thought, I really don't see how that could be possible. That 1 month from now, everything will fall into place, because I still had so many questions. I still felt so directionless. I still didn't know where I was going. And shortly thereafter is when my mediumship abilities came back online. And I really felt like I was starting to gain traction and I was getting excited. And I was thinking to myself, I still don't see how something, miraculous could happen by March 3rd. But I started making steady progress. I was, doing more one-on-one readings again and having actual income come in, which just felt so amazing after, not having that for so long. But I was trying to not get too excited because I didn't want to have I didn't want to be let down when March 3rd came around and it wasn't what I was expecting, but there was still a little part of me that was holding out hope that something big was going to happen on March 3rd. I've had these premonitions before where I feel like something is going to happen on a certain day or on a certain date. And what ends up happening, seriously, every time, is something big, but it's just something like in my mind that is big. I have a moment of clarity. I realize the direction I want to go. I'm able to finally let go of something. I always want it to be something big externally that happens, but it's almost always something big internally that happens. And so I don't know why I was expecting something different this time, but I was really hoping it was something externally, like someone was going to swoop in and answer all my problems and just make it so that it was smooth sailing from here on out. But what ended up happening instead was just this crystal clear realization of what I want and the feeling of needing to go after what I want. And what I want, what lights me up, what I'm drawn to so much is being a content creator and being a podcaster as well. Like being able to use my voice to deliver messages to large amounts of people, to come on here and just be honest and authentic about who I am and what I'm going through means everything to me. I feel like I would be the luckiest person in the world if I could end up making this a career. And I know that that's not very realistic, but it's just what my heart wants. And I just really felt like it's time for me to fully own that and step into that. And, these past few weeks, I have been doing one-on-one readings, and I'm so grateful for everyone who has booked with me, either recently or in the past. It means so much to me. And it is a really beautiful gift that I am grateful to be able to give to people, is those one-on-one readings. However, I've always felt like that's not the long game. That's just something to help me get to where I want to be. And so this was really spirit kind of saying to me, if that's not what you want, that's not where you should be putting your effort right now. Because when I am giving one-on-one readings, as beautiful as it is, I'm very tuned in to that person's energy. And usually it takes away from my ability to then channel for the collective. And so there are days where I won't post on TikTok when I otherwise would, or my messages don't come out as strongly for the collective because I'm so focused on that individual. And so it's taking me away from what my ultimate goal is, which is to be a full-time content creator and podcaster. And so in my head, I was just like, of course, I didn't actually have some big moment of success or something like that. It had to be a moment of clarity that just unlocked in my brain. But I thought to myself, okay, at least I have a vision of where I want to go next, and I can go after that. And I can, know with conviction that that's what my heart wants. And that is when I channeled the, letting go of the rope metaphor, because it just felt like this total paradigm shift for me of seeing things from such a different perspective. But the thing about letting go of the rope that is very scary is you don't know what's going to happen. And while that's beautiful, there's also a possibility that nothing will catch you at all and you will just splat on the ground. Like, I know that is dark or whatever, but when you're free falling through the air, that's a possibility. And given our logical minds are actually telling us that that is the most probable possibility, is that nothing will catch us, nothing will take off, we won't be successful, and we will end up, dead in a ditch somewhere, basically. And so for the past couple days, I have been spiraling, for lack of a better term. And I didn't really know what was happening or why I was going through things. And our mind is so creative when it wants to protect us and doesn't want us to necessarily get hurt or fail or put us in a situation that isn't safe. And so it will tell us all of these things. And it's really hard to decipher what is your intuition, what is your ego, what is just like a fear that you're not meant to play into. And when you're in the moment, it all feels so real and so valid. And it's really difficult to decipher what is what. And that is why, in the last episode, one of the lessons that I really honed in on, but that I do not like, is that with time comes clarity, and your best friend in those moments where you are spiraling and you can't tell which way is up and you're truly just, in this panic mode, is to just try and give yourself time. Just try not to make a decision, try not to act on anything, try to just wait and see what happens. And so for me, some of the creative ways that my mind was telling me that I was going down the wrong path was that I was being selfish by wanting to focus on being a content creator and podcaster and not focusing on giving one-on-one readings, because one-on-one readings is a way to bring in a semi-steady income for my family. I also thought to myself, why the heck would my mediumship abilities come back online just to have me not do one-on-one readings? Like, that doesn't make sense to me. What kind of medium doesn't do one-on-one readings? I've never heard of that. No, I'm not going to have as big of an impact on people's lives by not doing one-on-one readings. It also made me feel like I didn't understand how all of the puzzle pieces fit together. And so then I thought, maybe my mediumship abilities are meant to be more focused on this podcast, and do I teach people something, and what's my niche, because you have to have a niche if you're going to make it, and just all of these things that were keeping me in a spiral. And all I want to do is serve humanity, fulfill my purpose, feel fulfilled by the work that I'm doing, and to help people in that. And so I couldn't tell if I was being selfish by not wanting to give one-on-one readings, or if I was actually listening to my intuition and my heart by letting go of the rope and going for what it is that I truly want, and not just halfway. It's like that 10x versus 2x mindset. Letting go of the rope is going for 10x, holding on to the rope is going for 2x. And it wasn't until last night, really, that I realized what was happening is that I was scrambling to try and grab the rope again, to try to have some feeling of stability, of security, of knowing what my future is going to look like, because at least, while giving one-on-one readings, I know what things look like. I know what my days are going to look like. I know what my future is going to look like. And maybe I can't see, several years from now, but I can see 6 months from now, and it feels stable and it feels good and it feels fine. But it doesn't light up my soul. I love in the moment when I'm giving one-on-one readings, but I've always known that that is not my end goal. That is not the main path that I feel inspired by. And something that just kept replaying in my head was, I know I've heard Mel Robbins say it, so I don't actually know if it's her quote or if she's quoting someone else. So I apologize if she's quoting someone else, but I've heard Mel Robbins say this, so I'm just going to attribute it to her for now, which is, I didn't come this far just to come this far. I didn't blow up my entire life just to get halfway to my dream life. I didn't leave every ounce of security and stability behind just to get to the finish line and say, no, I'm not going to cross it because I want to hold on to this stability. I didn't listen to my heart and my intuition again and again and again, only to get to the point where I say, no, I'm not going to listen to it this time. And so I realized, my mind, my logical mind, my ego is just trying to protect me from failure. It's just trying to protect me from ending up in a ditch somewhere. And that is why I've been scrambling to grab back onto the rope. But now that I can recognize that that's what's happening, I can just let go again. I can, hopefully relax into it a little bit stronger this time. Hopefully this time I'm not scrambling for the rope again, but I might be, and it had me really looking at all of these death and rebirth cycles that I've gone through over the past few months. And really, now that I look at it, it feels more like repeating cycles of grabbing onto the rope and then being okay with letting go, and then grabbing back onto it and trying to climb up it, and then being okay with letting go. And to some extent, I think we're always going to grab back onto the rope, but if we can increase the amount of time where we're free falling and decrease the amount of time where we're holding on to the rope, I think that that is really where our power lies, in our ability to co-create with the universe. And so right now I'm experiencing and experimenting with what that looks like for me. What does co-creating with the universe look like for me? I will be totally honest, especially when I was growing up and in my early 20s, there's that song, Jesus Take the Wheel, and I was not a fan of that song. Not because anti-religious or anything like that, but I felt like it was a cop-out. Like, you still have to take responsibility for things in your life. You still have to take action. You can't just say, Jesus, take the wheel, because then we're all just driving around with our eyes closed and we're going to get in car accidents. And so my way of not playing into that was to not let anyone take the wheel except for myself, to, like white knuckle it and be like, I will get there. I'm going to do this on my own. When in reality, it is a dance. It's truly, to me, like being in a dance with the universe. And there are times when you lead and there are times when the universe leads, and it is a balance. And sometimes it's going to be more in one court than the other, but it's still a dance and you're still meant to always dance together. And so, I am following my heart. I am, taking inspired action when I feel pulled in a certain direction. I've, put a lot of work into trying to grow this podcast. I know that there's more refining to do around the content and how I'm showing up, but I also know that my strength lies in my ability to just be honest and vulnerable and authentic. So I never want to take that piece away from it. And, I'm also putting more effort into content creation and making sure that I'm showing up daily on TikTok and growing my strengths there. And so I am taking action in that way, but I'm also surrendering by trying not to worry about where stability is going to come from, trying not to focus on the revenue or the money coming in, trying not to get caught up in any numbers or metrics whatsoever, and just rely on my own intuition during this time, which is so hard. It's so much easier said than done. And especially, when we're in our times of trying to grab back onto the rope, it can feel like we're following our intuition by grabbing back onto the rope. Like, that's what we're meant to do. But we have to just kind of be patient with ourselves and really realize if that is just a fear that is overlaying something that we're actually meant to focus on. And whenever I'm struggling to believe that this is a possibility for me, that this is actually something I could do, I think of that quote, I didn't come this far just to come this far. And I also look at my track record. I really try not to put an emphasis on numbers of followers or views or anything like that. But I do have over 40,000 followers on TikTok. I must be on to something if there's over 40,000 people that say, yeah, I want to hear more of what this girl has to say. And, I think the universe gives us those little key indicators of early success so that we know we're on the right track, so that we can look back and say, yes, I have had success with this and it will continue to grow. However, it's important not to rely on those things. But I also think it can be really helpful to look at other times in your life where you have felt like chasing after something, or you had your mind set up, or you were crystal clear and you went after a goal and you achieved it. And maybe it seemed far-fetched at one time, but because you were determined and you knew what you wanted and where you were going, you ended up achieving it. And I realized there's also something about struggling and suffering and doing something that you don't enjoy that feels so right to us as humans. I think a lot of us are addicted to the struggle. And so when something feels just good and it lights you up and it comes easy, it feels like something's wrong. Like, you must do something that, makes you uncomfortable, or that, is you don't enjoy during your day. And again, I'm not trying to say that I don't enjoy one-on-one readings, but it doesn't have the same level of high highs and fulfillment that content creation and podcasting give me. And so in my mind, I just thought, well, that's selfish not to have that incorporated, because a job is a job. And at some point, everybody's going to have to do something that they don't like. And while that's true to some extent, I also come back to, well, I didn't come this far just to come this far. I didn't chase my dream this intensely only to then be like, well, I can have half of my dream, but I'm still going to have this thing that doesn't quite feel right to me. And you also have to be okay with not having an example or a role model of someone who's doing what you're doing. I'm sure that there is another medium out there who doesn't give one-on-one readings, who is only on TikTok and focuses just on content creation. I don't know them. I've never met them. And from what I've seen, there aren't people really doing it this way and just fully relying on it in this way. And so that feels like I'm doing something wrong, but I have to realize that just because my path is different doesn't mean that it's wrong. And it doesn't make my impact on the world any less important because I'm impacting millions of people. And while it is such a beautiful gift to give a deep one-on-one reading to someone, I also know that the solace and the peace that it can give someone to just open up an app and see a message from their past loved one can be so reassuring and just make someone's entire day. I have to recognize that that is also having a really big impact on the world. And one of those things is not better than the other. They're just different. So, I think it's really important for us to be really honest with ourselves on what we want. And just figuring that out, I know can be so difficult to know, like, what is it that I want versus what my ego is telling me. So again, I would go back to give yourself time. But I also think a really helpful exercise is to just look at what your strengths are, look at what lights you up, and then look at the intersection of those two things. I think we force ourselves to try and do things that doesn't feel natural to us, that aren't, our natural talents, and we end up frustrated, we end up not feeling fulfilled. Whereas if we just admitted to ourselves, hey, I'm not the best at this thing, this is someone else's path, and I can focus on this stuff over here, not only would we be so much happier, but we would be able to serve humanity so much better if we just focused on what we were good at and what lights us up, and we let go of everything else. So my hope is for you, if you're listening to this and you want to co-create with the universe, that you're able to take a look at your life, at what you're going through right now, and just contemplate, okay, am I walking up a cliff holding onto a rope, or am I free falling and co-creating with the universe? And if you are going up a cliff, what steps can you take so that you can truly let go and follow what your passion and your dream is? And maybe you realize that you are someone who has been able to let go in the past, but you've scrambled and held back onto the rope. And what ways is your mind getting creative and stopping you from going after what you truly want and what's truly your heart's desire? Because it may feel selfish at first, but I promise you, you are going to be able to give back to the world in such a more beautiful and powerful way when you are following your own bliss and your own heart, and you're just in that state of free falling and co-creating with the universe. And when all else fails, when I feel like giving up, when I feel like throwing in the towel, that quote, I didn't come this far just to come this far, truly gives me so much strength. I have done a lot. I've been through a lot, especially in the past year. I've faced so many fears, and I did not come this far just to come this far. And again, this podcast means so much to me. I am always continuing to work on improving it. And I do think you're going to see an evolution in terms of really honing in on the voice and the content and focus that I want to have moving forward. But I promise to always keep my authentic self and what I'm going through at the heart of it, because that is what lights me up. And I know that that is what I'm meant to share. So if you've enjoyed this episode or any other episode, it would mean so much to me if you would just share it with one person. There's a little share button, and you can send them the link and just pass it on, whether they like it or not. you don't have to worry about that part. Leave that up to me. But if you could share it, that would mean so much to me. If you haven't already, please rate, review, and subscribe. And if you want to send me an email about anything, you can email me at guidedsoulllc@gmail.com. And of course, you can also catch me on TikTok. So until next week, keep going. You're doing amazing, and I love you.